So today we're going to talk about why you let a bad choice become a bad day that becomes a bad week and how you can break that cycle. My name is Dan and I did over 80 coaching calls in January alone, and this issue came up more than any other. So I'm going to map out the problem, how it is showing up in your life, and I'm going to run you through an exercise that you can jump into so that you can start breaking this cycle today. And if that sounds good, smash the like button and you'll find a copy of the worksheet in the description below. Now, most guys I speak to are struggling with the same things. They built a successful business, they have a family they love, but they just haven't been able to figure out health. How to make progress when they're so limited on time. How to be mindful over what they're eating while still eating with the family and not exposing their kids to diet culture. And how to make time for yourself, but still be present at work and at home. And the problem is that while you're figuring those things out, you've slipped into an autopiloted state that is actively pulling you further away from your goals and who you really want to be. Which is why you catch yourself scrolling on the phone completely checked out when you're with your kids. Or you pour yourself a drink after snapping at the wife because at the end of a long day, the kids won't go down to bed. Or you skip the gym session because you had to take a call and now you're halfway through a tub of ice cream before you even realize what it is you're doing. And the solution that you come up with to solve this is you just need more willpower. And although it sounds logical, it's wrong. You're not failing because of a lack of willpower. Look at the life and the business you built. Look at how you show up for your family. This is not a weak discipline issue. This is an emotional regulation issue. So let's break down what's going on here. Right now, we have a trigger, which is typically an emotion or a feeling, and that triggers an autopiloted reaction. So what we need here is a circuit breaker between these 2 points, and this is what I call the reset loop. Now, the reset loop is not grit, it's not motivation, it's a response system. So let me show you how it works. The reset loop is made up of 3 R's, the first of which is recognize. 2, develop the skill, and all of this is a skill, recognizing the trigger. What is that situation, that thought, that feeling that makes me then do this? And our only goal here is to create space that we can choose a different response to the current autopiloted reaction. And there are 5 questions that I find really helpful and allow us to be able to do this. First of all, what just happened? Where am I? Who am I with? What am I feeling? And what story am I telling myself? Because we make sense of the world through stories. Now, there are 2 rules to doing this. First, you can only use facts and no judgment language. Think of this as a tool to start developing your ability to be able to separate facts from emotions, because right now, our reactions are being driven by emotions and we want to choose responses based on facts. Now, once we put a pause point in here, we can move on to the second R, which is response. Now here we're going to use a tool called a choice point. But before we do that, I want you just to jot down very quickly a value statement. What matters to you? Who do you want to be in this situation? And why is that important to you? Because we can then use this to anchor back to some of our behaviors. Now a choice point is where we experience that trigger, okay, the thought, feeling, or emotion. And normally the reaction then is an away, what we call an away behavior. Okay, it is something that we do that pulls us further away from our goal, our identity, or our alignment. What we want to have is the choice to choose a towards behavior, something that moves me closer to my goal, alignment, or identity. And of course, our towards behaviors should be reflected in our values. Now, one of the big mistakes that I see people make when it comes to the choice point exercise is not getting into enough detail when it comes to the towards behaviors. Now, with the ice cream example that we used earlier, I bet if you just pause for a moment, you could tell me exactly which drawer the ice cream is in your freezer, on which side of the drawer. You would know where you would put the lid on the countertop, and you know exactly how that ice cream is going to taste when you put the first spoonful in your mouth. That is the level of detail that you need to have in your towards behaviors. Now, it might seem obvious to say, do you know what, I'm just going to take a quick 2-minute walk rather than eat the ice cream. But the problem is that there are steps that need to happen between you leaving your front door to take that walk. And when you are overwhelmed and exhausted, you are not thinking rationally, and your brain is not looking for friction. It's looking for the opposite. And as we just detailed, there is no friction between you thinking about ice cream and you getting it. So what we need to do is just map out everything that needs to happen for you to be able to execute on that towards behavior. I'm going to go to the shoe cupboard, I'll grab my trainers, I'm going to throw them, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to head out the door. Get into the details. And I would recommend having at least 3 towards behaviors. And then finally, that moves us on to our third R, which is reps. You need to practice this a lot. Now, I mentioned earlier that all of this process is a skill, and I define a skill as an interaction between an individual, their environment, and an activity. And you can think of it like swinging a golf club. Telling you to swing a golf club and hit a ball gives you no information about how it feels to do that. What you need is reps. So over time, you start to distinguish between what you need to do to hit the ball cleanly and send it off into the distance, and what happens when you do something different and you shank it off to the side. That's a feeling, and you need time to develop a sense of what makes a good rep and a poor rep. And at times that will involve going back and rewriting some of those towards behaviors and acknowledging, do you know what, that one just doesn't work in the moment. And so to help that process come along, I think it's also helpful to have at least 2 or 3 award goals. What I mean by this is, what are the things you're currently doing, and what would 1, 2, 5, 10% better from that look like? So it could simply be, instead of eating a whole tub of ice cream, I just had 5 mouthfuls. Because the goal here is to move closer to your goal, not towards perfection. Now, what I've done is I've created a worksheet that you can find in the description below so that you can work through the reset loop in its entirety. And if you found that helpful, hit the like button, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.